The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine grounds of the Galactic Academy for Advanced Learning, its crystalline spires reaching toward the azure sky of Kepler 442b. Director HFY adjusted her bioluminescent throat patches nervously as she reviewed the latest batch of admission files. The Academy had welcomed students from across 47 different species over its 300-year history, but never before had they received an application from the mysterious species known as humans. The humans had only recently made contact with the Galactic Federation, emerging from their isolated solar system with technology that impressed even the most advanced civilizations. Their application to join the Academy had been unanimous among the Board of Regents, partly due to curiosity and partly due to diplomatic necessity. The Federation was eager to integrate these newcomers into galactic society. HFY's assistant, a graceful Etherian named Ara, materialized beside her desk in a shimmer of silver light. "Director, the human transport vessel has entered our system. They'll arrive within the hour." "Excellent," HFY replied, her reptilian features brightening. "Have you reviewed their educational requirements? I want to ensure we accommodate their learning needs properly." Lumara's form flickered slightly, a sign of concern among her people. "There are some unusual entries in their documentation. They mention something called recess as a mandatory educational component. Our xenobiologists suggest it might be a form of meditation or perhaps a nutritional break." "Fascinating. What else do we know about their learning patterns?" "They require approximately 8 hours of rest per rotation, consume solid organic matter for sustenance, and apparently learn through something they call play. Our best translators believe this refers to recreational simulations designed to enhance cognitive development." HFY nodded thoughtfully. The Academy prided itself on adapting to each species' unique requirements. The crystalline Zephyrite needed specific harmonic frequencies to learn effectively, while the gaseous nebula spawn required pressure chambers for optimal concentration. Surely accommodating human needs would be no more challenging. As the human transport ship descended toward the landing platform, hundreds of Academy students gathered at observation decks to catch their first glimpse of the newcomers. The vessel itself was remarkably primitive by galactic standards, relying on chemical propulsion rather than the elegant quantum-fold drives used by most civilizations. Yet there was something undeniably robust about its design, all angular lines and reinforced plating. The landing platform hummed with activity as the ship settled with a thunderous roar that made several delicate species cover their auditory organs. Steam hissed from cooling vents as the massive cargo bay doors slowly opened. What emerged defied many expectations. The humans were bipedal, as the files had indicated, but their physical presence was more imposing than the holographic representations had suggested. They moved with a fluid confidence that spoke of natural athleticism, their binocular vision scanning the environment with an alertness that reminded HFY uncomfortably of apex predators from her own homeworld. Leading the group was a female, human who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chen, the appointed education liaison. She was accompanied by 12 human younglings between the approximate ages of 12 and 18 standard years, each carrying personal belongings in sturdy containers that looked designed to survive significant impacts. "Director HFY, I presume," Dr. Chen said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Her grip was surprisingly firm, and HFY noted the calluses that suggested regular physical labor. "Thank you for welcoming our students to the Academy. We're honored to be here." "The honor is ours, Dr. Chen. We're eager to learn about human educational methods and share our own knowledge." HFY gestured toward the towering spires around them. "We've prepared dormitories in the newcomer wing and adjusted our curriculum to include your required recess periods." Something flickered across Dr. Chen's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or concern. "You've scheduled recess periods?" "Naturally. We understand it's essential to human learning. We've allocated the meditation gardens in Sector 7 for your students' use." Dr. Chen glanced at her students, who were examining their surroundings with intense curiosity. One of them, a tall male with sandy hair, was studying the molecular composition scanner near the entrance with the same focus a warrior might give to a potential weapon. Another, a smaller female with dark skin, was testing the strength of a decorative railing by hanging from it. "I think there might be some cultural translation issues we need to address," Dr. Chen said carefully. When we say recess, we don't exactly mean meditation. Before Zexhai could respond, an announcement echoed across the platform in the Academy's standard 67 languages. All students report to Orientation Hall for the welcome ceremony. As they made their way through the Academy's corridors, Zexhai couldn't help but notice how the human students moved. While other species glided, floated, or skittered with species-appropriate locomotion, the humans walked with a purposeful stride that seemed to eat up distance efficiently. They also displayed an alarming tendency to touch things, running their hands along walls, testing the flexibility of decorative plants, and examining architectural details with their fingertips. The Orientation Hall was a marvel of galactic engineering, with gravity fields adjusted for each species' comfort and atmospheric processors maintaining optimal breathing conditions for all attendees. Representatives from dozens of species filled the amphitheater-style seating, their varied forms creating a rainbow of biological diversity. As the human students took their assigned seats, Zexhai noticed other species watching them with intense curiosity. The humans appeared equally fascinated by their classmates, though their attention seemed particularly drawn to the more physically imposing species like the mantis-like keepers and the heavily armored stone singers. Chancellor Vorthak, an ancient being whose species had achieved spaceflight before humans had discovered agriculture, began the traditional welcome ceremony. His telepathic voice resonated through every mind in the hall as he spoke of unity, learning, and the sacred pursuit of knowledge that bound all civilized beings. During his speech, one of the human students, the sandy-haired male, leaned over to whisper something to his companion. The gesture looked innocent enough, but Zexhai's enhanced hearing caught fragments of their conversation. "Check out the structural supports," the boy was saying quietly. "See how they're distributed? Classic weak points at the joints. Tommy, you're supposed to be listening to the welcome speech, not conducting siege analysis." The girl beside him whispered back. "Siege analysis?" Zexhai's throat patches dimmed with concern. Perhaps there had been more translation errors than initially suspected. The first day of classes proceeded smoothly enough, though several instructors reported unusual observations about their human students. Professor Klymesh, who taught theoretical physics to mixed species groups, noted that humans seemed to grasp complex concepts through something they called thought experiments, mental simulations that involved imagining themselves in various scenarios, often violent or dangerous ones. Consider the question of relative velocity, Professor Klymesh had posed to her class. While the Zephyrite students hummed mathematical harmonies and the Etherians calculated through light pattern meditation, the human student named Marcus simply said, "It's like being in a spaceship that gets hit by enemy fire while you're throwing a baseball forward. The ball's speed is your throw plus the ship's speed, minus whatever velocity you lose from the explosion." The casual reference to combat scenarios in an academic setting raised several of Professor Klymesh's eye stalks in alarm. Meanwhile, in advanced xenobiology, Dr. Chen observed the morning classes with growing unease. The human students were adapting remarkably well to their alien classmates, but their methods of interaction were causing confusion among the other species. When introduced to a crystalline student named Sharpsong, a human girl named Emma had immediately asked about the structural integrity of crystal-based life forms and whether they could regenerate from damage. "It's fascinating how your species maintains molecular cohesion," Emma had said earnestly. "Back home, we learned that crystals can be fractured along specific planes. Do you have natural defenses against targeted impacts?" Sharpsong had resonated with confused harmonics, unsure whether this was academic curiosity or threat assessment. As the morning progressed, anticipation built among the Academy's faculty for the first official recess period. The meditation gardens in Sector 7 had been specially prepared with soothing bioluminescent plants, calming harmonic generators, and comfortable resting alcoves designed to accommodate human physiology. At precisely 10:47 Standard Time, Dr. Chen escorted her 12 students to their designated recess area. Director Zexhai and several department heads followed at a discreet distance. Eager to observe this mysterious human learning ritual, the meditation gardens were a masterpiece of serene design, with gently flowing water features, soft organic curves, and an atmosphere carefully calibrated to promote peaceful contemplation. Various species young could often be found here during their rest periods, quietly absorbing knowledge through species-specific methods of reflection. What happened next would later be described in Academy records as the incident that changed everything. The moment the human students entered the gardens, their entire demeanor shifted. The boy called Marcus immediately began examining the terrain with the focused intensity of a military surveyor. Emma started testing the stability of decorative rock formations. Two others, twins named Jake and Luke, began what appeared to be some form of strategic communication using hand signals. "All right, everyone," called out Tommy, the sandy-haired student who seemed to hold a leadership position. "Standard perimeter establishment. Emma, Jake take high ground reconnaissance. Sarah and David secure the water features for tactical advantage. Everyone else assess available resources and potential defensive positions." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her expression mixing pride and concern. "Students, remember you're being observed. Perhaps we should start with something less—" Her words were cut off as 12 young humans exploded into motion with terrifying efficiency. What the Academy faculty had expected to be peaceful meditation instead resembled the opening moves of a military operation. Emma and Jake scrambled up the tallest rock formation with the fluid grace of trained climbers, their hands and feet finding purchase on surfaces that would challenge many spacefaring species. From their elevated position, they began calling out observations in what sounded like tactical jargon. "Clear sight lines to all approaches," Emma reported. "Natural choke points at the eastern entrance. Those decorative plants provide excellent concealment for ambush positions." Meanwhile, the twins had positioned themselves at opposite sides of the main water feature, using the reflective surface to maintain visual contact while covering maximum territory. Their hand signals were rapid and precise, clearly the product of extensive practice. The remaining students spread throughout the garden with devastating efficiency, each taking up positions that Director HFY suddenly realized provided overlapping fields of observation and mutual support. Within minutes, the peaceful meditation space had been transformed into a complex defensive network. "Director," whispered Professor Klimesh, her voice tinged with awe and terror, "they've established a complete tactical perimeter. Look at those positions. Any hostile force entering this space would face coordinated resistance from multiple angles with excellent cover and fallback positions." But the humans weren't finished. Tommy produced what appeared to be a length of rope from his personal belongings, while Sarah revealed a collection of small tools that had passed Academy security scans as educational implements. Within moments, they had constructed what could only be described as an obstacle course using garden furniture, decorative elements, and natural features. "Obstacle run in 30 seconds, Tommy announced. "Marcus, your timing." Standard rules. Fastest completion wins, but style points for creative problem solving. What followed was a display of physical capability that left the observing faculty stunned. One by one, the human students navigated their improvised course with speed and agility that defied their appearance. They leaped over water features, swung from ornamental fixtures, rolled under constructed barriers, and demonstrated coordination that spoke of countless hours of practice. The student called David completed the course by executing what appeared to be a controlled fall from a considerable height, rolling to distribute impact and coming to his feet in a ready stance that looked suspiciously combat-oriented. "Excellent form on that tactical entry," Emma called out from her elevated position. "But you telegraphed the approach. In a real scenario, you'd want more deception in your movement pattern." "Real scenario?" Director HFY felt her bioluminescent patches flickering with alarm. Dr. Chen noticed her distress and hurried over. "Director, I can see this isn't what you expected from recess," Dr. Chen said apologetically. "Perhaps we should have been more specific in our cultural briefing materials." "Dr. Chen," HFY said slowly, watching as the human students began what appeared to be a complex group exercise involving coordinated movement and tactical communication. "What exactly do humans mean by recess?" Dr. Chen glanced at her students who were now engaged in what looked like a combat drill disguised as a game of tag. "Well, it's a break from academic studies where children engage in physical activity and social interaction. It helps develop coordination, problem-solving skills, social hierarchies, and—" She paused, seeming to realize how her explanation might sound to alien ears. "And survival instincts." "Survival instincts," HFY repeated faintly. "Yes, you see, human children naturally engage in play that mimics adult survival behaviors. Games of chase, hide and seek, king of the hill, Capture the flag, they're all basically training exercises disguised as fun activities. As if to illustrate her point, the human students had divided into two teams and were engaged in what they called a strategic capture mission, using the garden's various features as terrain obstacles. Their movements showed clear military influence, with covering fire using harmless projectiles made from garden materials, coordinated flanking maneuvers, and communication protocols that would have impressed professional soldiers. Professor Kleimesh approached with several other faculty members, all wearing expressions of fascinated horror. Dr. Chen, are you telling us that human children routinely engage in combat training as part of their educational development? Well, we don't usually call it combat training, Dr. Chen said with a slight smile. We call it playing. The Academy's gymnasium had been hastily modified to accommodate human physical education requirements. What had originally been designed as a meditation and light exercise space for various species now resembled something between a military training facility and an extreme sports arena. Dr. Chen had provided detailed specifications for human PE equipment, which the Academy's fabrication systems had dutifully created. The alien faculty members gathered in the observation gallery looked down at an intimidating array of apparatus. Climbing structures that reached nearly to the ceiling, rings and bars suspended over padded surfaces, obstacles that seemed designed to challenge every aspect of physical capability, and what humans mysteriously called sports equipment. I've reviewed the human educational documentation, Professor Venthara announced to the assembled observers. Apparently, physical education serves multiple purposes: cardiovascular conditioning, strength development, coordination enhancement, and something called character building. Director Zexai studied the equipment below with growing concern. Character building through physical trials? What kind of character do humans seek to develop? Before anyone could answer, the human students entered the gymnasium with their characteristic purposeful stride. They wore different clothing now, form-fitting garments that allowed freedom of movement while providing minimal protection. Several alien students had been invited to observe, and they clustered nervously in designated safe areas. Coach Williams, a burly human adult who served as the physical education instructor, addressed the assembled students. His voice carried easily through the large space, projecting authority in a way that made several alien species instinctively defer. All right, people, today we're demonstrating basic PE activities for our new galactic friends. Remember, we're representing all of humanity here, so let's show them what human determination looks like. The human students responded with enthusiastic affirmation that sounded remarkably like a military unit acknowledging orders. They immediately began what Coach Williams called warm-up exercises, a series of physical movements that would have constituted strenuous workout sessions for many species. Jumping jacks, push-ups, burpees, and mountain climbers, Coach Williams announced. Standard sets, begin. What followed was a display of synchronized physical activity that left the observing aliens stunned. 12 young humans moved in perfect coordination, performing exercises that required strength, endurance, and precise timing. Their movements generated rhythmic impacts that resonated through the gymnasium structure. By the crystal harmonics, whispered Pure Tone, the crystalline student who had attended to observe, they're training their bodies to withstand and generate kinetic force. Look at the muscle tension patterns. Emma, one of the human students, noticed the alien observers and called out between exercises. Hey, want to try some jumping jacks? They're pretty basic. The alien students exchanged glances of terror and fascination. A brave young Etherean named Shimmerbright materialized closer to the humans, her silver form flickering with curiosity. The purpose of these movements is unclear, she said in her melodic voice. Do they serve a meditative function? Marcus, breathing heavily but still capable of conversation, grinned at her. Nah, they get your heart rate up and work different muscle groups. Plus, they're good for building stamina. Stamina for what purpose? For whatever you need it for. Running, climbing, fighting if necessary. General preparedness. The casual mention of fighting sent ripples of concern through the alien observers. On their homeworlds, physical conflict was either unknown, highly ritualized, or handled by specialized castes. The idea that all human children trained for potential combat was deeply unsettling. Coach Williams had moved on to the next phase of the demonstration. Team sports rotation, he announced. Basketball, volleyball, and capture the flag. Show them how humans compete. The gymnasium floor had been marked with lines and boundaries that meant nothing to the alien observers, but clearly held significance for the humans. Coach Williams divided the students into teams using a method that appeared entirely random, but resulted in evenly matched groups. The first activity, basketball, involved two teams attempting to place a spherical object through elevated hoops while preventing their opponents from doing the same. The alien observers quickly realized this was far more complex than it appeared. Notice the multi-layered strategy, Professor Kleimesh murmured to her colleagues. Individual skill execution, real-time tactical adjustment, spatial awareness, and predictive analysis of opponent behavior, all while maintaining physical exertion that would exhaust most species. The humans moved with fluid coordination, passing the ball in patterns that seemed almost telepathic in their precision. When conflicts arose over possession, they engaged in controlled, physical contact that would have been considered assault. Among more peaceful species, Tommy executed what Coach Williams called a steal, intercepting an opponent's pass through quick reflexes and positional awareness. The move was immediately followed by a fast, coordinated sprint down the court that resulted in what humans termed a score. The speed of decision-making is remarkable, observed General Thexmore. They process multiple variables, assess probabilities, and execute complex strategies in seconds. But it was the emotional component that truly puzzled the alien observers. The humans were clearly engaged in intense competition, yet they maintained what appeared to be genuine friendship with their opponents. Successful plays were acknowledged with respect regardless of which team executed them, and errors were met with encouragement rather than reproach. How do they maintain social bonds while simultaneously attempting to defeat each other? Wondered Dean Mordak. Dr. Chen, who had joined the observation group, smiled at the question. That's one of the most important things human children learn through sports. Competition doesn't require hatred or permanent hostility. You can try your absolute best to beat someone while still respecting them and maintaining friendship. The volleyball demonstration reinforced this point. The human students dove, leaped, and threw themselves across the playing surface with abandon, their bodies absorbing impacts that would injure many species. Yet when someone made an exceptional play, even from the opposing team, both sides acknowledged the achievement. Incredible recovery time, noted the Academy's medical officer, Dr. Halixwound. They sustain minor impacts repeatedly and continue functioning. Their damage tolerance is extraordinary for such apparently fragile beings. The final demonstration was Capture the Flag, which transformed the entire gymnasium into a tactical battlefield. Coach Williams had erected barriers, obstacles, and hiding places throughout the space, creating a complex environment that the human students immediately began analyzing for strategic advantage. The rules were simple enough. Each team attempted to retrieve the other's flag and return it to their base while protecting their own. The execution, however, was a masterclass in small unit tactics that would have impressed military academies across the galaxy. The human students divided into roles without apparent communication: scouts who gathered intelligence on enemy positions, guards who defended key assets, assault teams who attempted direct objective capture, and support personnel who provided diversions and emergency assistance. They're operating with the efficiency of trained military units, General Thexmore said with undisguised admiration. Look at those movement patterns, coordinated advances, covering fire with harmless projectiles, tactical retreats, and regrouping procedures. Sarah demonstrated what she called advanced reconnaissance, using the gymnasium's structural elements to achieve elevated observation positions that would have challenged experienced infiltration specialists. From her concealed vantage point, she provided intelligence updates to her team using hand signals that were clearly the product of extensive practice. Meanwhile, Jake and Luke had established a defensive perimeter around their flag, using interlocking fields of observation and prepared fallback positions. Their coordination was so seamless it appeared almost supernatural. How long do human children train for such tactical proficiency? Asked Professor Venthara. This isn't special training, Dr. Chen replied. This is just normal PE class. Human children naturally develop these skills through regular play and education. The Capture the Flag game concluded with a brilliant tactical maneuver that left the alien observers speechless. David's team had appeared to be losing, with their opponents controlling most of the gymnasium and closing in on their flag. Instead of surrendering or attempting desperate last stands, they executed what Coach Williams later explained was a strategic withdrawal and counter-assault. The team abandoned their defensive positions in apparent retreat, drawing their opponents forward in pursuit. Once the opposing team had committed to the advance, David's group revealed concealed positions throughout the gymnasium and launched a coordinated multi-vector assault that overwhelmed their enemies through superior positioning and timing. Within minutes, they had retrieved the enemy flag while their opponents were still pursuing phantoms. That was a textbook. Word of the humans' unusual recess activities spread through the academy faster than a quantum transmission. By the afternoon meal period, students and faculty from dozens of species had gathered in the observation areas overlooking Sector 7, watching in fascination as the human younglings continued their mysterious rituals. The cafeteria buzzed with conversations in multiple languages, all centered on the same topic. The Zephyrites hummed concerned harmonics about the violent nature of human play, while the Etherians flickered with nervous energy patterns. The massive Titans, usually the most imposing species at the academy, seemed genuinely unsettled by what they had witnessed. "They move like hunters," rumbled Gorthon, a senior Titan student whose species stood 3 meters tall and possessed natural armor plating. "But they are so small, so fragile-looking. How do they achieve such coordination?" His question was overheard by Marcus, who had approached the serving area to acquire what humans called lunch. The human boy looked up at the towering Titan with interest rather than intimidation. "Coordination comes from practice," Marcus replied casually, loading his tray with what appeared to be an enormous quantity of food by academy standards. "We start training when we're really little. My sister learned to throw accurately before she could walk properly." "Training?" Gorthon's voice carried a note of confusion. "You speak of warfare preparation for infants." Marcus paused, considering his words carefully. "Not warfare exactly. Games, tag, dodgeball, Red Rover, capture the flag. You know, normal kid stuff." He noticed the blank stares from the assembled alien students. "Oh, you guys don't have any of those, do you?" A crystalline student named Puretone resonated with curiosity. "Could you explain dodgeball? Our translators indicate it involves spherical projectiles and evasive maneuvers." "Sure," Marcus said, his face lighting up with enthusiasm. "You get 2 teams and each side tries to eliminate the other by hitting them with rubber balls. You can catch throws to get teammates back in the game. And you have to use strategy to coordinate attacks and protect your players." The alien students exchanged glances that ranged from puzzled to horrified. "You deliberately attempt to strike each other with projectiles?" asked Silkweaver, a delicate arachnid-like being whose species was known for their peaceful nature. "For enjoyment. It's not as violent as it sounds," Marcus assured them. "The balls are soft and there are rules about where you can hit someone. Plus it teaches reflexes, teamwork, and spatial awareness. Really useful skills." Useful skills for what, the aliens wondered but were afraid to ask. Meanwhile, in the Academy's administrative offices, an emergency faculty meeting had been called. Director Zexhai stood before a holographic display showing footage from that morning's recess period, her bioluminescent patches dim with concern. "Colleagues," she began, "we face an unprecedented situation. Our human students appear to have transformed a peaceful meditation space into what our military consultants describe as an impressively efficient tactical position." The assembled faculty members, representing dozens of species, watched the footage with varying degrees of alarm. The recording showed the human students' rapid deployment throughout the garden, their construction of obstacles and defensive positions, and their subsequent games that looked remarkably like combat exercises. Professor Venthara, the Academy's expert in species psychology, raised one of her 4 arms. "Director, I've been analyzing the behavioral patterns. These activities appear to serve multiple developmental functions for humans: physical conditioning, hierarchical establishment, resource management, tactical thinking, and social bonding through shared adversity." Shared adversity? Dean Mordak, a representative of the peaceful harmony species, looked disturbed. "Are you suggesting human children bond through simulated conflict?" "It appears so. Notice how they communicate during their activities. Constant status updates, strategy adjustments, and coordinated responses to changing conditions. It's remarkably sophisticated for what they term play." Dr. Chen had been invited to the meeting to provide cultural context. She sat at the conference table, surrounded by beings whose idea of childhood development involved meditation, artistic expression, or intellectual communion with racial memory banks. "I understand this seems alarming," Dr. Chen said diplomatically, "but human recess activities serve important developmental purposes. They help children learn to assess risks, work as teams, and develop physical capabilities necessary for their environment. But why must this development involve simulated combat scenarios?" asked Professor Limasha, whose own species learned through dream sharing and psychic resonance. Dr. Chen paused, realizing she needed to explain something that was so fundamental to human nature that she'd never really thought about it before. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a world filled with predators and environmental challenges. Our children instinctively engage in behaviors that would have been essential for survival in our ancestral environment. "And those behaviors involve practicing warfare?" Dean Mordaugh's voice carried a note of accusation. "Not warfare specifically," Dr. Chen said, choosing her words carefully. "Competition, yes. Physical challenges, certainly. Learning to work together under pressure, absolutely. But humans distinguish between practice and actual conflict. Our games have rules, boundaries, and mutual consent." The holographic display continued showing the human students' activities. In one segment, a girl named Sarah demonstrated something she called parkour, moving through the garden environment by vaulting over obstacles, balancing on narrow surfaces, and executing controlled drops that would terrify most species. "Observe the efficiency of movement," noted Professor Klimesh. "She assesses each obstacle in milliseconds and selects optimal approaches. The risk calculation capabilities are extraordinary." "Risk calculation?" Director Zexhai focused on that phrase. "Professor, are you suggesting humans deliberately engage in dangerous activities for developmental purposes?" "It appears so. Notice how the other students monitor each other's safety while still maintaining competitive intensity. They're learning to balance personal risk with group welfare." On screen, the human students had begun a new game they called King of the Hill, which involved one individual attempting to maintain control of the highest point in the garden while others tried to displace them through coordinated assault. The alien faculty watched in fascination as complex alliances formed and dissolved, with students switching between cooperation and competition as the tactical situation evolved. "The strategic complexity is remarkable," admitted General Thexmore, the Academy's security chief, whose own species was among the galaxy's most militaristic. "They're demonstrating multi-level thinking, individual tactics, small unit coordination, and large group dynamics, all while maintaining what appears to be recreational enjoyment." Dr. Chen nodded. "That's the point. Human children learn essential skills through play. It's enjoyable, so they want to do it, but it's also preparing them for adult responsibilities." "What sort of adult responsibilities require such martial preparation?" asked Director Zexhai. The question hung in the air as everyone considered the implications. Dr. Chen looked around the room at beings whose species had achieved interstellar civilization through paths of intellectual development, spiritual evolution, or technological transcendence. None had required their children to practice combat scenarios for simple recreation. "Any adult responsibilities that might arise," Dr. Chen said simply. "Humans prepare for possibilities rather than just probabilities." As if summoned by her words, an announcement came through the Academy's communication system. All students were to report to the gymnasium for physical education. Assessment, another mandatory component of human education that the Academy had agreed to accommodate. The alien faculty members exchanged glances that mixed curiosity with dread. If this was what humans called recess, what exactly did they mean by physical education? 6 months after the humans' arrival at the Galactic Academy, the annual interspecies academic competition took place, a tradition that had remained unchanged for over 2 centuries. Representatives from academies across 47 systems gathered to demonstrate their students' achievements in various disciplines, ranging from theoretical mathematics to artistic expression. This year, however, something was different. The competition began traditionally enough. Crystalline students from the Harmony system demonstrated perfect mathematical harmonics that could calculate quantum probabilities through pure resonance. Etherian students from the Silver Nebula created light sculptures of impossible beauty that conveyed complex philosophical concepts through visual Metaphor. The massive stone singers presented geological symphonies that told the history of planetary formation through seismic vibrations. Then came the practical, problem-solving segment, where teams faced unexpected challenges designed to test their ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. This year's scenario involved a simulated colony ship crisis, multiple system failures requiring immediate response to prevent catastrophic loss of life. The human students approached the challenge with their characteristic systematic analysis. Within minutes, they had divided into specialized teams, established communication protocols, and begun implementing coordinated response procedures. But this time they weren't alone. Sharpsong, the crystalline student, had positioned herself at a central monitoring station where she could observe all system displays simultaneously. AI, tactical positioning technique she'd learned from Emma. Her harmonic resonance abilities, originally developed for meditation, now served as an early warning system for critical failures. Structural stress patterns indicate imminent hull breach in Section 7, she chimed with perfect clarity. Recommend immediate evacuation of adjacent areas. Gorthan and his fellow Titan students had formed what they now called a damage control team, using their natural strength and newly learned coordination techniques to handle the physical aspects of emergency response. Their movements showed the influence of human tactical training, efficient, purposeful, and precisely coordinated. Section 7 evacuated and sealed, Gorthan reported. Emergency repairs initiated using redundant systems protocols. The Etherian students, led by Shimmerbright, had discovered that their natural ability to process information at light speed made them ideal for what humans called intelligence coordination. They gathered data from multiple sources, analyzed patterns, and distributed critical information to response teams with unprecedented efficiency. Power grid failures cascading through Sections 3, 5, and 9, Shimmerbright reported. Recommend implementing backup power sequence, Charlie 7, while rerouting primary systems through hardened conduits. The competition, judges, veteran academicians from across the galaxy watched in amazement as students from species that had barely been able to communicate 6 months earlier now functioned as an integrated crisis response team. Their solution wasn't just effective, it was revolutionary. Professor Thanemore of the Ancient Reach Academy voiced what many judges were thinking. Those aren't the same species we've observed in previous competitions. Their coordination is unprecedented. Director Zexhai, representing the Galactic Academy, felt a mixture of pride and concern as she watched her students excel beyond all expectations. Human educational methodologies have proven highly effective at developing cross-species cooperation. Human methodologies? Professor Thanemore's tentacles writhed with interest. Are you suggesting that one species has influenced the other's capabilities so dramatically? It's more complex than influence, Dr. Chen explained from the observation area. Human learning systems emphasize adaptability, teamwork, and rapid problem-solving under pressure. These skills are transferable across species when properly adapted to each culture's strengths. The competition continued with the diplomatic scenario segment, where student teams had to resolve a complex trade dispute between multiple alien cultures with conflicting interests and incompatible value. Systems' traditional academic approaches involved careful mediation, extensive research into cultural backgrounds, and gradual consensus building that could take weeks or months to achieve resolution. The Galactic Academy team took a different approach. Tommy and Marcus had spent months learning to understand the communication patterns and cultural values of their alien classmates. They now served as what they called cultural intelligence coordinators, rapidly identifying the core concerns and motivations of each faction in the dispute. The Zephirites aren't really concerned about trade volumes, Tommy reported to his team. Their harmonic patterns indicate they're worried about cultural contamination from exposure to incompatible frequencies. The nebula spawn are signaling resource scarcity anxiety, Marcus added. They need guaranteed access to specific stellar phenomena for reproduction, but they're too proud to admit vulnerability. With this intelligence, Sarah and Emma developed what they termed parallel negotiation tracks, separate but coordinated, discussions that addressed each party's real concerns while maintaining the appearance of a single unified negotiation. The alien students contributed, their species' unique capabilities to this process. Pure tone used crystalline resonance to detect emotional undertones in communications that were invisible to other species. The Titan students provided what humans called presence projection. Their massive, peaceful forms conveyed stability and protection that reassured nervous negotiation partners. Most remarkably, Silkweaver and her fellow arachnid students had adapted human concepts of information networking to create what they called truth webs, complex patterns of verified information that prevented the miscommunications and deceptions that often derailed diplomatic efforts. The result was a resolution achieved in hours rather than months, with agreements that satisfied all parties' genuine needs while establishing frameworks for future cooperation. The judges were no longer merely impressed, they were concerned. This level of capability represents a fundamental shift in galactic educational paradigms. Professor Venthkela of the Core Worlds Academy observed, "If one institution can achieve such dramatic improvements in student performance, traditional academic approaches may become obsolete." More troubling was the nature of the improvements. Students were demonstrating abilities that seemed almost military in their precision and effectiveness. The peaceful exploration of knowledge that had characterized galactic education for millennia was being replaced by something that looked suspiciously like training for conflict. During the final segment, creative artistic expression, the true extent of the transformation became apparent. Instead of individual presentations showcasing each species' cultural heritage, the Galactic Academy students presented a collaborative work that no one had thought possible. They had created what they called a multi-sensory historical narrative that told the story of galactic civilization from the perspective of survival, adaptation, and cooperation in the face of existential challenges. The presentation incorporated elements from every participant species while maintaining thematic unity that spoke to universal experiences of struggle and triumph. The crystalline students provided harmonic frameworks that conveyed mathematical beauty and structural stability. The Etherian students created visual components that captured the emotional resonance of historical events. The Titans provided gravitational dynamics that gave physical weight to abstract concepts. The humans contributed narrative structures that emphasized growth through adversity and the strength found in diversity. The result was more than art. It was a vision of galactic civilization that emphasized resilience, cooperation, and adaptive capability rather than the traditional themes of peaceful contemplation and individual achievement. When the competition concluded, the Galactic Academy students had achieved something unprecedented. They had won every category not through individual excellence, but through collaborative effectiveness that exceeded the sum of their parts. As other academies departed with their delegations, several directors approached Director HFY with requests that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. "Director," Professor Thanemore said quietly, "we would like to request human educational consultants for our own institutions." "As would we," added Director Krelthax of the Peaceful Union Academy. "Our students face challenges that our traditional methodologies seem unable to address." Dr. Chen stepped forward, understanding the implications of these requests. "What kind of challenges?" "Piracy in the outer systems has increased dramatically," Professor Thanemore admitted. "Our graduates are simply unprepared for situations involving actual hostility or violence. Resource conflicts are becoming more common," Director Krelthax added. "Species that have coexisted peacefully for centuries are developing territorial disputes. We need students who can navigate conflict rather than simply avoiding it." Director HFY realized what was happening. The galaxy was changing, becoming less peaceful and more dangerous. Traditional educational approaches that emphasized contemplation and individual achievement were proving inadequate for emerging realities. Human noun chalani. In the days following the gymnasium demonstration, a curious phenomenon began occurring throughout the Galactic Academy. Alien students, initially terrified by human play behaviors, started approaching the humans with requests that would have seemed impossible just a week earlier. It began with Sharpsong, the crystalline student who had been among the most disturbed by the humans' tactical recess activities. She approached Emma during a lunch period, her crystal form resonating with nervous harmonics. "Human Emma," Sharpsong chimed, "I have been processing your species training methodologies. Would it be possible to learn some of your defensive positioning techniques? Emma looked up from her meal, a quantity of food that would sustain most aliens for days but seemed barely adequate for human nutritional needs. You want to learn tactical positioning? Sure, any particular reason? Sharpsong's form dimmed slightly with embarrassment. My species achieves cognitive enhancement through harmonic resonance, but this requires periods of vulnerability. On my homeworld, there are disruptions that sometimes threaten meditation periods. Your ability to rapidly assess and secure environmental positions could be most valuable. What Sharpsong didn't mention, but Emma's enhanced pattern recognition immediately identified, was that the crystalline homeworld had recently experienced civil unrest. The peaceful species suddenly found themselves needing skills their evolution had never provided. No problem, Emma said cheerfully. Let's start with basic situational awareness. First rule, always know your exits. Within an hour, Emma had taught Sharpsong fundamental principles that human children learned through playground games. How to position yourself to monitor approaches, how to identify cover and concealment options, how to recognize terrain advantages and disadvantages, skills that humans considered basic survival knowledge but represented revolutionary concepts to a species that had lived in peaceful harmony for millennia. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself surrounded by a group of young titans, their massive forms somehow managing to look uncertain despite their imposing size. Human Marcus, rumbled Gorthon, your species demonstrates remarkable damage tolerance. Could you explain your recovery methodologies? Marcus grinned, recognizing professional interest when he heard it. You mean like how to take hits and keep going? That's mostly about biomechanics and mental conditioning. He demonstrated what humans called rolling with impact, techniques for absorbing and redirecting kinetic energy that prevented serious injury. The Titans, despite their natural armor and size advantages, had never considered such methods necessary. Their peaceful evolution had provided protection, but not adaptation to sustained conflict. Your species learns to intentionally sustain impacts for training purposes. Gorthon asked with growing amazement. Well, yeah. How else do you learn to handle getting hit? The first time someone gets knocked down in a real situation can't be the first time they learn how to get back up. The concept of deliberately practicing being injured was so foreign to most galactic species that it bordered on incomprehensible, yet the practical applications were undeniable. Humans demonstrated rapid recovery from impacts that would incapacitate other beings for extended periods. In the Academy's advanced technology labs, Tommy had attracted attention from the Etherian students with his approach to problem solving. While they approached engineering challenges through elegant theoretical frameworks, Tommy analyzed everything from a perspective of, how could this be weaponized and how do we defend against it? Consider this communications array, Professor Lamasha had posed as a design challenge. How would you optimize it for efficiency? While the Etherian students created mathematical models of signal propagation and energy optimization, Tommy immediately identified the system's vulnerabilities. The main transmission node is exposed to direct attack, he observed. A single projectile could disable the entire network. You'd want redundant systems, hardened components, and backup power sources isolated from the primary systems. Why would anyone attack a communications array? Asked Shimmerbright in genuine puzzlement. Tommy looked at her with the patient expression humans wore when explaining obvious concepts to children. Communications are always primary targets in any conflict. Disrupt enemy coordination and you gain massive tactical advantage. Any system this centralized is basically asking to be eliminated. The Etherian students exchanged flickering patterns of concern and fascination. They had designed elegant systems optimized for peaceful operation, never considering that someone might deliberately attempt to destroy them. Could you show us how to make systems more resistant to disruption? Professor Lamasha asked carefully. Within hours, Tommy had revolutionized their approach to engineering design.
Human concepts like redundancy, hardening, and survivability were foreign to species that had never faced deliberate sabotage.
But the practical applications were immediately apparent. The most significant development occurred in the Academy's xenopsychology department, where Professor Venthara was conducting interviews with human students to understand their cognitive development patterns. Describe your decision-making process when facing an unknown situation, she requested of Sarah. Sarah considered the question thoughtfully. First, assess for immediate threats. Identify escape routes and defensive options. Evaluate available resources and potential allies. Gather information while maintaining security. Develop multiple contingency plans based on different scenarios. Professor Venthara's multiple arms moved rapidly, taking notes with specialized instruments. This process occurs automatically for all unknown situations? Pretty much. Doesn't everyone do that? The honest confusion in Sarah's voice highlighted a fundamental difference between humans and other galactic species. What humans considered basic, situational awareness represented a level of tactical thinking that most aliens only applied during extreme emergencies. Could you teach these assessment techniques to other species? Professor Venthara asked. Sure, but they're really basic. Any human kid learns this stuff. The irony was not lost on Professor Venthara. Basic human survival skills represented advanced tactical knowledge by galactic standards. Word of these informal training sessions spread rapidly through the Academy's communication networks. Within days, students from dozens of species were requesting instruction in human play techniques. The peaceful meditation gardens of Sector 7 had been transformed into training areas where alien students practiced concepts like situational awareness and tactical positioning and threat assessment. Director Zexai watched the developments with mixed feelings. On one hand, the cross-species cooperation and learning was unprecedented in Academy history. On the other hand, her educational institution was rapidly resembling a military training facility. Director, Professor Klimesh reported during their weekly faculty meeting, academic performance across all species has improved dramatically since the humans began sharing their methodologies. How is that possible? Zexai asked. Human learning techniques emphasize rapid information processing under pressure, pattern recognition, and adaptive thinking. These skills translate directly to academic performance. Students who learn to make tactical assessments in seconds find theoretical physics comparatively simple. Dr. Chen, who had become a permanent addition to the faculty meetings, nodded with understanding. Human education has always been about preparing for unpredictable challenges. Academic subjects, physical training, and social development are all part of the same survival curriculum. But the other species are also developing. Concerning capabilities, Dean Mordak observed with worry. Yesterday, a group of Harmony students successfully executed what they called a strategic resource acquisition mission to obtain additional study materials from the library. They conducted a tactical operation to get books? Dr. Chen asked with amusement. They established perimeter security, conducted reconnaissance, executed coordinated infiltration, and achieved their objectives without detection. For a species evolved for pure pacifism, their rapid adaptation to tactical thinking is unsettling. Director Zexai realized they faced an unprecedented situation. The humans hadn't just brought their students to the Academy. They had begun transforming the nature of galactic education itself. Dr. Chen, she said slowly, what exactly have we gotten ourselves into? Dr. Chen smiled with genuine warmth, but there was something in her expression that reminded everyone present that humans were apex predators who had conquered a world designed to kill them. You've gotten yourselves some very dedicated allies, she said simply, and we've gotten the chance to share what we know about surviving in a universe that isn't always friendly. The implications of that statement would reshape galactic civilization in ways none of them could yet imagine. The question hung in the gymnasium's atmosphere like a gravitational anomaly, drawing the attention of every being present. Dr. Chen looked around at the assembled alien faculty and students. Their varied forms united in expressions of fascination and growing unease. Earth, she said simply. We call our homeworld Earth. Director Zexai's bioluminescent patches flickered with anticipation. Perhaps you could describe it for us? Our xenogeology department would find the information illuminating. Dr. Chen activated her personal datapad and projected a holographic representation of Earth into the space above them. The blue-green sphere rotated slowly, showing continents, oceans, and swirling white clouds. To most galactic species, it appeared deceptively peaceful. Earth is what we classify as a Class M planet, Dr. Chen began. Gravity approximately 10 meters per second squared, oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, surface temperatures ranging from -80 to +60 degrees Celsius, and about 71% ocean coverage. Those parameters seem within normal ranges for inhabited worlds, Professor Klimesh observed. What environmental factors necessitated such intensive physical training for survival? Dr. Chen's smile carried a hint of something that made several aliens step back unconsciously. Where should I begin? Earth hosts approximately 8.7 million different species, many of which view humans as potential prey. Our planet experiences regular natural disasters including earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, and ice ages. The alien observers exchanged glances. Most civilized worlds had long since achieved environmental stability or moved to more hospitable planets. Continue, Director Zexai said faintly. Our gravity is roughly 30% higher than galactic standard, which explains why our children can execute those jumping and climbing maneuvers so easily in your reduced gravity environment. Our atmospheric pressure requires robust cardiovascular systems, and our day-night cycle creates regular environmental challenges that require adaptation. She gestured to her students, who were still engaged in what they called stretching, but looked more like flexibility training for infiltration specialists. But the real formative factor is our evolutionary history. Humans developed as persistence hunters on a world where nearly everything was trying to kill us. Everything was trying to kill you? Pure Tone's crystalline structure resonated with harmonics of disbelief. Oh yes, large predators, small venomous creatures, hostile weather, disease, environmental hazards, competing human groups, and food scarcity. For most of our species' history, survival required constant vigilance, physical capability, and tactical thinking. Dr. Chen expanded the holographic display to show Earth's wildlife. The assembled aliens stared in growing horror at an endless parade of creatures that seemed designed specifically to hunt humans. Massive felines with retractable claws, pack-hunting canines, enormous ursine predators, reptilian ambush predators of tremendous size, aerial hunters with razor-sharp talons, and countless smaller creatures armed with toxins, venoms, and parasites. Your world appears to be populated entirely by biological weapons, General Thexmore said with professional interest. How did your species achieve dominance over such an ecosystem? Persistence hunting, tool use, and cooperative tactics, Dr. Chen replied. Humans aren't the fastest, strongest, or most heavily armed predators on Earth, but we're the most persistent and the best at working together. She showed footage of human persistence hunting, a technique where human hunters tracked prey animals for days or weeks, following them relentlessly until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. The alien observers watched in fascination as humans demonstrated their species' most terrifying capability, the absolute refusal to give up. You pursue prey until it dies of exhaustion? Silkweaver's delicate features conveyed profound disturbance. This seems unusually cruel. Actually, it's one of the more humane hunting methods, Dr. Chen said. The prey animal isn't injured or tortured. It simply runs until its cardiovascular system can no longer sustain the effort. Humans can maintain pursuit for incredible distances because our cooling system and energy, metabolism are optimized for endurance rather than speed. She activated a new display, showing human physiological adaptations. Efficient sweat-based cooling, optimized oxygen processing, energy storage systems that could sustain activity for extended periods, and recovery capabilities that allowed rapid healing from minor injuries. Your cooling system involves leaking fluids through your skin? Asked Dr. Helixwound with medical fascination. That seems dangerously inefficient. It's extremely efficient for extended activity and high temperatures, Coach Williams interjected. A trained human can maintain pursuit in conditions that would kill most Earth predators. We don't overheat, we don't need to stop for cooling periods, and we can carry water supplies that extend our operational range almost indefinitely. The implications were sinking in among the alien observers. A species that could pursue targets relentlessly across vast distances, in extreme conditions without rest or mercy. The children's games begin to make sense, Professor Venthara said slowly. They're practicing pursuit, evasion, endurance, and tactical coordination because these were survival requirements on your homeworld. Exactly, Dr. Chen confirmed. Tag teaches pursuit and evasion. Hide and seek develops concealment and search patterns. Capture the flag trains tactical thinking and objective-based missions. Sports develop the cardiovascular fitness, quick decision-making, and team coordination that kept our ancestors alive. Tommy, The sandy-haired student, who seemed to be the informal leader of the human group, approached the conversation area. "Dr. Chen, are we making them nervous?" Some of the alien students looked kind of scared. Indeed, many of the observing alien students had moved further away from the humans, their various forms of body language conveying unease. The Etherians were flickering rapidly with anxiety patterns, and several of the more delicate species had retreated to the maximum safe distance. "It's natural for them to be concerned, Tommy," Dr. Chen said gently. "Remember, most of these species evolved on much more peaceful worlds than Earth." "Oh, that makes sense," Tommy said with the casual acceptance of youth. He turned to address the alien students directly. "Hey, you guys don't need to be afraid of us. We're not going to hurt you or anything. We just play differently than you do." His attempt at reassurance had the opposite effect. Gorthan, the massive Titan student, spoke for many when he asked, "How do we know you won't hurt us?" "Your play appears to be training for warfare." Emma joined the conversation, her expression earnest. "Because hurting someone when you're supposed to be playing would be cheating. Humans really don't like cheaters." "But your games involve simulated violence," pointed out Shimmerbright, her ethereal form flickering with confusion. "Simulated, yeah," Marcus added, approaching with several other human students. "There's a huge difference between practice fighting and real fighting. In practice, you're trying to improve everyone's skills. In real fighting, you're trying to eliminate threats." The casual distinction between practice fighting and real fighting sent additional waves of concern through the alien. "Observers, could you explain the difference?" Director Zexhai asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Sarah stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. "In practice fighting, everyone goes home healthy and better trained than when they started. In real fighting, threats are neutralized permanently. The rules are completely different." "Neutralized permanently?" squeaked one of the smaller alien students. "Well, yeah," Luke said matter-of-factly. "If something is actually trying to kill you or hurt someone you care about, you stop it from being able to do that. Forever, if necessary." The gymnasium fell silent except for the ambient hum of life support systems. The alien students and faculty struggled to process the implications of a species that not only trained their children for combat, but made casual distinctions between practice violence and real violence. "Dr. Chen," Director Zexhai said carefully, "when you say humans developed as persistence hunters who view nearly everything as potential threats, are we potential threats?" Dr. Chen looked around at the assembled aliens, beings of crystal and light, delicate arachnid forms, towering but peaceful giants, and dozens of other species that had achieved interstellar civilization through paths of intellectual and spiritual development rather than physical dominance. "Only if you try to hurt us or someone we care about," she said, with a smile that was probably meant to be reassuring. "Otherwise, you're just new friends we haven't gotten to know yet." The human students nodded agreement with this assessment, their expressions friendly and open. They genuinely appeared to mean no harm to their alien classmates, which somehow made them even more terrifying.